Hello there again, welcome to episode number 9 of the Microsoft Partner Quick Bytes. Allow me to start the session by thanking again our sponsors TD Synnex, also Aero, Copaco, Climedia, Ingra Micro and SmartWorks. Thank you very much for supporting this channel. That being said, welcome again to episode number 9. We are still looking for more subscribers, so please click the button here below to subscribe in this YouTube channel in order to be sure that you receive a notification also when a new recording, when a new session is being made available. Thank you for that. Dear people. So let's talk about episode number 9. Episode number 9 is all about SAM, all about SharePoint Advanced Administration. And actually, I was planning to do a short session on this, and while preparing this session, I actually discovered that it is again so quite impossible to keep it short, and I even discovered that it might be a good idea to try to create, first of all, a shortish session in part 1 and then have a part 2 for those people that want to see and learn about the real details behind SharePoint Advanced Administration. So part 1 is like an overview of the SharePoint Advanced Administration. Is really giving you a good summary of what it is, and it is also positioning SharePoint Advanced Administration on top of what you also need to do anyway when deploying Copilot in an organization. So let's get started with part 1 as part of this session. Now what we will cover, of course, we will cover SharePoint Advanced Administration, but before I talk about SharePoint Advanced Administration, let me first talk about the best practices for managing and securing and governing at the end of the day SharePoint when you start to use it out of the box, and especially in the context of using Copilot. So there are some best practices that are not new at all, but all of a sudden, because of Copilot, because of generative AI in general, I think the best practices are again quite important to talk about. And then the other topic, of course, is actually the topic we covered in the previous episode, is all related to the Microsoft 365 security capabilities, because remember, Microsoft 365 is a collaboration suite. It's a productivity suite, personal productivity, team productivity, organizational productivity. But most importantly, I think in the last few years, especially Microsoft 365 is also a security suite, and it's full of capabilities that you will want to use in order to secure and govern Copilot. So also that one will be covered a little bit today. And then, of course, I'll talk about, on top of everything that you do with the best practices, on top of everything you do through the Microsoft 365 security capabilities, what can you do with SharePoint Advanced Administration to really lock down and govern in a very sound way your SharePoint environment. And of course, why is that so important? Because, of course, Copilot, and especially Microsoft 365 Copilot, and certainly also Copilot Chat. So even if you do not have the full Microsoft 365 Copilot license, but you just use Copilot Chat as part of your Microsoft 365 subscription, it is important to realize that people, your colleagues, yourself, you typically will want to include in the conversation, the prompts with Copilot Chat, content that resides in OneDrive, that resides in SharePoint. And you will really want to be sure that if people start to reference these files explicitly also, that you're well protected against accidents at the end of the day. So let's start by talking first about SharePoint best practices in order to really secure SharePoint at its foundation. Now, I'm not going to give a full detailed session on what you need to do. It's actually rather like a good overview, a good summary of many of the things that you're supposed to know already. The first thing is all about optimizing search, because at the end of the day, when Copilot is, and especially in the context of the full license, the Microsoft 365 Copilot license, what it typically does, it sees what you are working on, it sees what you are sharing, it sees what you're sharing in OneDrive, it sees what you are sharing and accessing in SharePoint, and it is using actually your access privileges in order to know what information it can use, it can disseminate actually, Copilot can use actually to inform you about something you're asking for. And that all starts by making sure that, of course, the search engine that is being used for that is well configured. And that is, of course, SharePoint. And if you take one step back even, of course, the real power of Copilot comes really with SharePoint, comes really with OneDrive. If you're not using OneDrive, if you're not using Teams, if you're not using Exchange, if you're not using the Microsoft 365 collaboration tools, and you're still working on premises with file servers, of course, the value of Copilot will not be as big as it is when you use SharePoint, and especially if you have the search engine well configured. Secondly, of course, you will want to prevent oversharing, and you will want to control access in a very strict way for SharePoint and OneDrive. Now, what that means, several things. Let's start by reducing, preventing accidental oversharing at the organizational level of your SharePoint environment. It comes down, for instance, to setting the sharing settings for both SharePoint and OneDrive. In this example, for instance, from organization-wide sharing to specific people links, you will typically want to change that default. When people start to click on a file, click on in OneDrive or in SharePoint, you will want to make sure that by default they don't see automatically like a link they can share with anyone. You probably will prefer to have a system that by default suggests that you specify people specifically that you will want to share the content with. Yes, of course, from a convenience perspective, that is extra burden to be taken by the users. But at the end of the day, for some of the SharePoint sites, and maybe probably for most of the SharePoint sites, by default, this is probably the default setting you will want to set. And that's why you will want to do it at an organizational level. The other thing is consider hiding this sharing with everyone except external users, because that's also something that is very convenient, is that you can share with all employees in the company except of course external users, but also there you will want to change and hide that setting so that again people are obliged to be very specific to whom they will want to share. There is this other thing that is to be seen as a temporary solution. If you are introducing Copilot Chat, but especially if you're introducing Microsoft 365 Copilot, probably you have some sites that contain quite sensitive information, and for these sites, you will probably want to restrict actually Copilot to search these sites in order to answer questions from users. That is typically meant as a temporary solution, as I put here on the slide, to give your organization the time to adopt Copilot. And while they are adopting Copilot, you will typically do all the things that I will be discussing today to make sure that also these SharePoint sites that contain the most sensitive information, and make sure that you have a better, more specific policy implemented for nicely securing the SharePoint environment. Because at the end of the day, what is so nice about Copilot, the Microsoft 365 Copilot license, is that it always respects your security policy. It always respects your security implementation. So that means, of course, that you need to have a security well implemented by using all the things that we will be discussing today. If you didn't do that yet, then still you could decide, let's go and adopt Copilot. but make sure that you restrict the access of Copilot only to a few, maximum 100 for instance. Well, you can specify up to 100 sites that you have restricted, that Copilot has restricted access to. At the site level, of course, at some point in time, you have owners. And one of the things is that you will need to make sure that it's clear that each site has an owner. And then you will want to educate the administrators, typically the owners of the site, about the settings that they can change to restrict members from sharing. And that's actually what I share here on this page. For instance, a default setting might be that people are allowed to do external sharing to anyone. You typically will want to say that, specify that you only want people in your organization. That's just an example of something that you will want the admins to use, and that they are well aware of this setting, that this is a setting that is typically under their control, and that they have also that responsibility. We'll come back on that in a moment. Then the other thing is the site owners. If somebody needs access to a website and for some reason they do not have access, they can specify and ask for access, and then the owner of the site will receive actually the request for access. But of course, this only works if every site has a clear, well agreed upon owner, and we need to make sure that the owner is the correct owner and not somebody else that should not have the privilege to access to receive these access requests for a site. You will want to make sure that the real owner, the person that at the end of the day should be responsible, is receiving these access requests. So that is certainly also another important one. And then when we talk about OneDrive at the site level again, make sure that also there you specify who let people outside of your organization access a site, about external sharing, that you can specify, and to which kind of users can we then, or do we allow people to share their OneDrive content. And typically you could say, well, whomever they choose, because at the end of the day, it is the user who is responsible for his own OneDrive, but then still you can specify that, for instance, only sharing with external users is allowed if it is a guest who is already known as a guest in the directory in Entra ID, or that you want them to go through an invitation process before they get access. That is yet another thing that you will want to make sure. And then check the permissions on the site access and the SharePoint. Also there, if you go to the SharePoint Admin Center and you check out the settings for specific sites, you will see all kinds of settings like privacy. Is it private? Is it public? And many other things that you will want to configure, including also the membership. That's the other thing that you will want to configure and review. So these are really like things that are really basic. It's like SharePoint hygiene. It's really the foundation. It's not new at all, but all of a sudden, and from a partner perspective, the way you should look at it, if your customers start to adopt Copilot, and especially also Copilot Chat, it's also a good moment to discuss with the customer the hygiene of their SharePoint environment and offer them a review, an assessment of their SharePoint environment, so that these best practices are being used. On top of that, and as I said already, that's actually a little bit the topic of the previous quick Bytes, is actually what you can achieve with the security capabilities of Microsoft 365. And of course, the security and governance or compliance, the security and the compliance capabilities of the suites, Defender, Suite and Purview. What I'm talking about, first of all, if you are really new to this topic, I absolutely invite you to watch the previous Quick Bytes, number 8. And also I think this topic, let's be honest, it's a topic that is, well, quite new. We are all quite in learning mode still when we talk about, things related to Defender and Purview. I think that most of us will want to watch this session once more to have a good overview. In summary, what is it all about? First of all, it starts, of course, with Microsoft 365 Business, specifically Basic and Standard. It provides us quite some features out of the box which are important, especially in the context of using Copilot, and it starts, of course, by having the multi-factor authentication in place. Because if an attacker gets in and and you didn't activate multi-factor authentication, they will in much more easier, and they can then access your Copilot. They will for sure use very dangerous prompts to access all kind of information. Other features that are already included in the basic and the standard version of the business suites are things like the Purview audit standard and the retention and deletion policies at the level of Exchange, at the server side, not at the client side. That's an important thing to remember. That is certainly all kind of things that you will want to use, will want to configure in a better way. Now, of course, the real message is don't stay at the level of basic and standard. At least go to business premium. And if you have more than 300 users, go to E3. Why? Well, the most important reason, without any doubt, is conditional access. It's nice to have multi-factor authentication, but the real thing that you need is conditional access, and that you really have access based on conditions that are always different. And conditional access is a no-brainer these days. Like multi-factor authentication was a no-brainer. 3 years ago, conditional access should be a no-brainer today. And then, of course, thanks to Business Premium, you have quite some Purview features. Most importantly, the Purview retention policies and labels that become available. And why is that important? Of course, retention is about making sure that some content, for instance, gets deleted automatically after some point in time. Deleted, why? Some content might not be relevant anymore for some reason, and it is important that non-relevant content is not discoverable by Copilot, so that Copilot will not give answers on old information. So retention policies, already from this simple perspective, is quite important. Manual Purview sensitivity and retention labels are, of course, important, so that people are invited and invited in their client applications when creating a Word document or when creating even a chat conversation, that they can apply a sensitivity label, so that also the sensitivity label is being respected by Copilot, so that Copilot will not use that information against whatever you have specified in the sensitivity label related to who can access the content. So using sensitivity labels, introducing sensitivity labels, allowing people to use indeed these sensitivity labels manually will also help your organization to protect sensitive information against Copilot that might think that it's okay to share this information with the user. Data loss prevention, DLP policies are also part of Business Premium. Same story, even if you didn't apply as a user sensitivity labels, you still want to have a system that automatically detects indeed content that is sensitive but is not labeled, and because it's been detected as being sensitive, that it's still in real time protected against usage that should not happen. And also that is important because Copilot otherwise might access this kind of content. And there is the e-discovery features I'm going to skip. The session of last week was about, on top of Business Premium, you will want to use Defender Suite and Purview Suite. I'm not going to repeat everything that I discussed in the last session. I think that is also becoming a no-brainer today. And from a partner opportunity perspective, clearly it's an important thing to check out. And one of the things I like most is the first one, is again conditional access, but this time based on identity risk, based on this Entra ID Premium Plan 2 set of capabilities, more specifically the identity protection feature, where it's not identity protection, I have to have, okay, identity protection, where every sign-in, where every user is constantly monitored and scored, and that scoring can then be used as part of your conditional access policies in order to help the system decide whether somebody should have access or not. And you have all the other things that are part of Defender and Purview that will help you to protect and to govern your data in a very sound way. And that is of course the basis, that's of course the foundation that you need to have in place. And then still we have SharePoint Advanced Administration on top of all these things we just discussed. Now what is SharePoint Advanced Administration? It's actually a set of capabilities on top of SharePoint to govern. And govern is typically not about configuring things, it's about making sure that the configuration at every point in time is really best for the situation, and that you are constantly making sure that SharePoint is nicely aligned with whatever security and compliance policies you have set. That's the whole point. And by design, SharePoint comes with a lot of settings you can use, as I discussed previously, but you need, because it's not included, you need a tool now or set of tools that help you to keep things aligned, not just after one day, but aligned, constantly aligned to whatever danger that happens. Now there is a whole story about that. What do we mean? What are the objectives of this governance? First of all, it's about managing content sprawl. What we mean here is we have so much digital content and we'll have more and more digital content. And already, as I said, the more digital content you have, some content will become obsolete. But if Copilot does not know that some content is obsolete, it will still use it as valid data, as valid information, and it might misinform users because it has access to obsolete data. So managing content sprawl is very related to allowing people to create sites, SharePoint sites, as many sites as they want, and for the rest not looking back on what they created, and at the end of the day you end up with many SharePoint sites. First of all, from the relevance perspective, you might end up with many SharePoint sites that are not relevant anymore, but also from a security perspective, if you end up with many sites that are not really governed anymore by an owner, not checking whether it's still being accessed by users, you end up with an environment that has a lot of attack surface in a way, and you need to reduce that. If the site is not needed anymore, get rid of it, basically, and you need tooling to help you with that. Prevent oversharing is of course quite related, because the more sites you have, the more content you have that people can start to share. And also there you need to prevent that people start to overshare. And that is of course quite related to what I discussed earlier about what you could do to make sure that people are not widely sharing content to anybody that they think of, that they are really conscious about to whom I'm sharing what. And also the broken content inheritance is very related to, at some point in time you specify at an organizational level for SharePoint what the rules are, but somehow, some point in time, a site owner, an administrator of a site might set specific settings that he thinks or she thinks are appropriate for that point in time for that specific SharePoint site, and you actually break inheritance from the organizational settings. And sometimes that is okay, but at least you need to have an overview of that. You need to understand why that is, and you need to manage that. You need to manage, in a way, the life cycle of your sites. That's actually what these 2 points bring together. And then again, you need to control to what content, SharePoint content, OneDrive content, actually Copilot has access. And again, that is not something you configure once, that is something you need to constantly configure, no, not configure, but monitor and keep it okay. And that is very related to what they call managed content lifecycle. So you think about the content, but managed content lifecycle is much more related to the settings, the specific settings of SharePoint sites that at the end of the day will define what people can do what with the content, and that defines actually the life cycle of the content. And also there you need tooling that allow you to govern the settings, that the settings that are active for specific SharePoint sites are really being monitored constantly, continuously, and helping you to be proactive on changing things, on bringing things aligned to your policies. Now, Microsoft, what they did do, so you saw me discussing these objectives, and then they introduced actually SAM, the SharePoint Advanced Management. And previously, the SAM capabilities, you had to pay for it, and you still can pay for it, $3, I think, per user, on top of what you already pay for SharePoint, on top of what you already pay for Microsoft 365 subscription, and then you could have the SAM capabilities. And you were typically obliged to pay this extra $3 per user for every user. Now the good news is, if you introduce just one Copilot license in your big organization, you're covered. And I repeat it, I'm absolutely sure, I checked it many times. You're absolutely okay if you buy just one Copilot license for your big organization. You can actually use all the features that I'm about to discuss now from a high level perspective. Now what I did here, it took me quite some time to create this slide, to be honest. It was not easy for me because I struggled also myself in understanding what all the SAM capabilities are. It took me really a big time to create what you see here, and especially it took me a lot of time to create what I will show you in the next slide. But here you see already a good structure on how to understand the SAM capabilities. And actually you have three domains. You have the lifecycle management, site lifecycle management capabilities as you see them, and I made a mapping nicely to the objectives we just discussed. And in this case, site lifecycle management is one-to-one mapping with managed content sprawl, as you will see. And then you see then the features in a way, the capabilities that are being provided to you. I will discuss. Then at the level of content lifecycle management, remember that it's actually the lifecycle management of the settings of your specific SharePoint sites. There also you have again some capabilities that map, of course, one-to-one to manage content lifecycle, because it's the same name. For permission access management, it's a little bit more complex in a way. There are many capabilities provided by some related to permission and access management, and some relate very much to preventing oversharing. Some relate rather more to manage content lifecycle management, and some relate to what you see here on top, the access that Copilot has access to. Now, have a look what I have done. And I'm quite proud about what you will see now. In order for me to understand all this, I was looking for a good structure. And this is a structure I came up with. I created a timeline, like what should you do in like a timeline, phase by phase. And in this session, I will give you a good understanding, an overview of what I show you here in a build-up way. In part 2, I will go in detail on each of these items with screenshots of how it looks like. So in this session, I will give you an introduction to what I mean. So it all starts with reducing accidental oversharing with SharePoint sharing settings. And remember, we discussed the SharePoint sharing settings, but remember my point, the problem is with these settings is that you set them, but you need to govern like the life cycle of these settings. And one of the things that you could do is block download from specific SharePoint sites and OneDrive sites. Up front, for sure, you know some of the sites for which you know that you want to block downloads. That's certainly a best practice that is being promoted very much that you will want to do. And that's actually one of the features that is being provided as part of some to help you do that. Then this one, and actually this is, I've done some research on it. This is actually not really a sum capability. It's rather a Copilot capability. So once you start to deploy or buy actually a Copilot license in your organization, you have this feature. And we discussed this feature already. It's this feature where you can temporarily restrict discovery of certain SharePoint sites. Actually saying, well, this SharePoint site, we are not ready yet for that SharePoint site. It should be restricted. It should not be used, so the system should not have access. So this is certainly a feature that you will want to use in the beginning. That's probably one of the most important ones. And this one, the compare SharePoint site policies, it's actually a feature, a capability that you have with some that allows you to compare, for instance, a reference site with all its settings, and then select multiple other sites and then get the view on, okay, where is the difference? So that you actually can see how well all your SharePoint sites, because you end up typically with easily 100 SharePoint sites, that you end up with a lot of completely different settings. And with this tooling, with this tool basically, with this policy, with this kind of policies, with this kind of capability, you can actually discover clearly where you break the rules, where you have sites that are really configured in a completely different way, content sprawl, basically, than what you will want to do. So it helps you to discover where you need to take action. It allows you to compare the SharePoint site policies, settings actually. Yeah, that's a good thing. Then the second thing that you will want to do, I already discussed it, is making sure that you have site owners. And therefore you have this thing that is called the site ownership policy that you can use, so that, you find and you discover which sites don't have an owner anymore. Because you need to identify the owner, and you need to be sure that the owner is aware of the responsibilities he has being the owner. One of them is, for instance, that I will discuss later, that they will need to do access reviews, that you will invite the owners of the sites every 6 months or every year, for instance, to do an access review, that they are invited to check whether the members of the site still need that specific access. And why is that important? Because these users, they use Copilot, and when Copilot is being asked for some information, Copilot will only check those data sources, SharePoint sites in this case, to which that user has access. So reviewing the access, the members for each SharePoint site is an important thing, and that should be done by an owner of the site. So you have tooling to automatically monitor and enforce site ownership. Then the next thing that you will want to do is clean up unused sites to manage content sprawl. I already discussed that a little bit, and also there we have tooling. One of them is, of course, the inactive sites policy. It's actually a policy that you activate, and once you have activated it, you'll get again an overview of all sites that are inactive. You get to see what sites are really inactive, and that's typically where you need to take action. AI Insights, and AI Insights, probably you can put it everywhere, but AI Insights, what it does, and especially if you have like 100 sites and you will easily end up having 100 SharePoint sites, AI Insights will still give you like a summary, a high-level view, an actionable view immediately to see where you need to take action. So it's not just one big report, an Excel file, a CSV file, because that's what you get at the end of the day, but it also comes with the AI insights that helps you interpret these insights actually from the CSV file. And of course, what you still could do is restrict the site creation. You might decide that only specific users are allowed to create sites. Typically, you allow everybody to create sites, but typically you don't want that. You want to restrict that and make sure that when people start to create sites, that they are aware that they become the owner, that they have extra responsibilities, extra work actually, and that's certainly something that you will want to use. Then, You will want to identify the sites with potential overshared content. And for that, most importantly, and I think this one is probably one of the biggest topics in my next session, part 2, it's all about the data access governance reports. Because these governance reports, you could also create them with PowerShell, these governance reports give you a clear view on where the data resides that is sensitive, and it maps that with which sites are being shared a lot, or which files are being shared a lot, and with external users, internal users, and it helps you to really discover where the biggest danger is. It helps you to really take action where action is necessary most urgently, actually. So the data access governance reports are actually very important component, probably the most important component, I think, of the SAM capabilities. Enterprise App Insights is very related to the fact that, of course, you start to deploy all kinds of applications in your environment. And when you deploy an application, they typically use an Entra ID, Enterprise Application Registration. And as part of an application registration, you typically also have to specify to which data resources, to which APIs also at the end of the day, that app through that registration gets access to. What we typically see is that most enterprise app registrations provide too many privileges to the apps. And that is actually a danger, because if somebody can hack that app, they actually get all the privileges that have been specified in the app registration, including access to certain SharePoint sites. And again, through the SAM tooling, the capabilities, you get to see where this potential danger is. Yeah. Number 5, we have 6 in total. Number 5 is related to the control access to the content. So the access Copilot has to the contract. And there also content, you have all kinds of tooling, you have all kinds of capabilities. One of them is maybe that you might restrict access to all OneDrives to only specific users, actually excluding users that are not allowed to access, for instance, OneDrives of others, even if the other people have decided that they share it with you, or they share it with a certain group of people, and for some reason you are in that group. Well, if that user is also not in the security group you specify here, at the end of the day, you will not have access. So this is certainly something that you might want to use, especially if you use a lot of security groups as a foundation to decide who can do what and who can do what, actually. You can also specify the same thing specifically for specific OneDrives. That requires some extra tooling that you need to do through PowerShell, but once you have done that, you could actually specify a security group, and you could specify, well, only people in that security group, but for these sites, these OneDrives, will be able to access. So it allows you to be more granular in all that. And more relevant, I think, in a way, is that you can do the same thing, of course, for SharePoint sites, and that you can specify for certain SharePoint sites whether people have access through security groups. And again, that's one of the features that you have there. And the last one is taking proactive measures on business critical sites. Of course, business critical sites is these sites that are containing the most sensitive information. And one of the things that you will want to do is, for instance, to review your recent site actions. And that's actually a feature I will demonstrate. It's an easy one. It's about you as an administrator showing your recent site actions. Because if you're managing SharePoint, at some point in time you might lose overview of what did you change lately, and it helps you to get this overview. Now, the other one is the change history reports. And the change history reports is not just about what you did change, but this one is actually about giving you a report showing you what did change and who did change it, and get notified about changes, and even start to automate stuff and start to do things automatically in order to make sure that changes don't happen unnotable. That you get notified when people change settings. So that is the change history reports that help you doing that. The site access reviews I already discussed is making sure on a regular basis that the site owners receive the request from you basically to start an access review, and you support them to do that. It should not take too much time, of course, but they should be aware that it is their responsibility to do these access reviews. And there is also something related to agent, because the future is absolutely more, not just about Copilot, it is basically about agents. I think that becomes clear to everyone today. And agents, just like enterprise applications at the end of the day, because in a way an agent is an enterprise application that has access to data, to content, and agents become more and more powerful like enterprise applications, but even more powerful than enterprise applications, because they will do a lot of things proactively, start to talk to each other, and in the initiative more and more will come from agents and not from users in a way. And that's why, again, also SharePoint Agent Insights, it's a report, it's a set of reports, help you to understand as an administrator, what are the agents all doing here? And what agents are actually the ones I should review first, because they seem to do quite dangerous things, and maybe we should update the policies regarding what agents can do and cannot do. So it's a proactive measure that you will take. Voila, this was my overview. I promise you in part 2, if you like this topic, if you didn't really understand everything very well, in the next session, which will be live in 2 days or something, because I already prepared the slides, I still need to review them a little bit and do the recording this weekend or on Monday. So that's why I say maybe 2 or 3 days. And there you will get a much closer view on all these policies, on all these capabilities I just discussed. So check out part 2. If you want to receive an email when part 2 becomes available, make sure you go to this URL that I created over there. It will actually help you to receive an email from me personally every time when I make a new episode available. If not, go of course to the Partner Quick Bytes channel on YouTube, subscribe, and also there you can subscribe to a notification. It's an extra step actually. Subscribing is one thing, but receiving notifications from YouTube is an extra step you need to do in order to make sure that you are notified. Voila! Thank you very much, and once again, thank you very much, dear sponsors, and thank you very much for subscribing to the channel. See you in episode number 10.